What is the most environmentally productive way that somebody could switch from a petrochemical based wardrobe to something that is natural based?
So there's two things, and I think we have to be careful. It's like the most sustainable thing you can do is continue to wear and use the things you have, like not buying new. That's the most sustainable thing. I think the awakening is just being aware of it. And when you do go to buy new, you should buy it very considerate. I would be very conscious about how you do that and just start to, look online for things that are made out of natural materials.
How can I help? How can I be useful in ending needless suffering? Do not be afraid of work that has no end.
We have to organize a social movement.
We have an opportunity to lead by example versus just talking, hot air.
I think the more people in this fight, the more we grow. Eventually it could change. The people are the ones that can make the change.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Change Agents, an Ironclad original presented by our spicy friends at Firecracker Farm. This episode features fashion industry executive Eric Liedtke, who is featured as one of the whistleblowers on the new Netflix documentary, Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy. He now works to help make fashion less destructive and raise awareness about the dangers of plastics. Little information here about Eric. Eric is a former executive at Adidas, and after leaving the company, he started Unless Collective, the world's first all-plant, zero-plastic, regenerative fashion brand. Under Armour has recently acquired Unless and has installed Eric as the company's new executive vice president of brand strategy, a move Eric thinks can help Unless scale. A little bit of information on plastics in clothing. Approximately 70% of all clothes are petroleum-based plastics. The average person eats, drinks, and breathes between 78,000 and 211,000 microplastic particles every year. Between 200,000 and 500,000 tons, yes, you heard me correctly, tons of microplastics from textiles enter the global marine environment each year. The majority of microplastics from textiles are released during the first few washes. Let's get into the episode with Eric. It's interesting you used to work for Audi. I never worked directly with Reebok, and maybe people don't know that Reebok was owned by Audi for a long time, but I actually managed the partnership between CrossFit and Reebok when they joined forces for the CrossFit Games. And they, obviously a lot of that had to be run through, I think it was in Germany. They had to run the contracts kind of all the way up the flagpole for that stuff. So
that was me. So, yeah. So ultimately I was the brand president that looked after. So my official title, being in a German company, was executive board member, global brands, which means all creation rolled up to me, being whatever brand we had. So it was, at that point it was Runtastic, it was Audi, and it was Reebok. And so when Matt O'Toole or Todd Krinsky or those guys did the deals, they would have to come, ultimately I'd have to sign, to approval. I mean, I would let those guys run as much as possible, but the CrossFit Games, actually CrossFit probably got set up under Uli Becker before I stepped in. And then I think maybe we did a renewal or something, but it was fun. I went to a couple of the championship games. I still have a couple of the swag bags that I use for my surf trips.
Yeah. The physical performance those athletes are capable of. I never left one of those events not at least inspired. I wish I had done more with that inspiration, like worked out as hard as they were, but it never got to that point.
It's crazy, man. Like just the Murph alone is like one of those things that I'm just like, I've been trying to do some of that stuff, like, just trying to, you from time to time, you just try and challenge yourself and like, okay, can I do 100 pull-ups over the course of 40 minutes? And, and then you try and do so I do this SEAL workout. This guy, this Admiral, his name's Bob actually. And he did a YouTube video that showed, hey, if you want to be a SEAL, this is what you got to hit. And it's like 1 pull-up, 2 push-ups, 2 pull-ups, 4 push-ups. Yeah, and you go all the way up to 10 and back down. And if you do that, it's 100 pull-ups and 200 push-ups. And then I throw in some core and some squats as well. And it's a great workout for 40 minutes, but I can't get to 100 pull-ups. I mean, I tap out in the high 70s. It's a beast, right?
It's a lot. It is for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, do you need a gift idea for somebody that you love, or do you just want to treat yourself? Well, I have one for you. Firecracker Farm Hot Salt is an absolutely awesome gift. It is delicious, it's handcrafted, it's beautifully packaged, and it's unlike anything else that is out there. Everybody who tries it absolutely loves it. Firecracker Farm has different flavors and heat levels like Pineapple Express and hotter stuff if that's what you're into, and their limited run buddy batches, the Apocalypto and Snake Eater. There's something for everybody. It's made with love, and a percentage of every sales goes to OP300 and the Pipe Hitter Foundation. There is one drawback, and that is you might not be able to get them. Firecracker Farm is a very small family business, and Alex can only make so much at a time. So there is a chance that they're going to run out. And once you get your hands on one of these grinders, you're going to understand exactly why they can't make them in batches. This is a handcrafted grinder with an amazing salt inside of it. If cost is your main concern, worry not. There are hundreds of thousands of servings per package, which is way cheaper than any sauce. And it's not going to over flavor like a lot of sauces traditionally do. If you are ready to upgrade your culinary game and get your hands on one of these amazing grinders yourself, use the code Ironclad, all one word, all capital, to get 15% off your first order at firecracker.farm. How'd you come to work for Adi and in the apparel industry? Like, kind of walk me through how you got to that role that you held, which was a fantastic fill an entire business card full of acronyms after it in that German company.
Exactly. So, yeah, listen, if you go back, so I'm born and raised in the Rust Belt. So between Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Madison, Wisconsin, went to school in Wisconsin. And then my first job was in Detroit, working on for an ad agency called Darcy Macy's Benton and Bowles. And I was working on things like Florida's Transworld Delivery and Cadillac. And that just wasn't me. I mean, I identified very early if I wasn't in sports, doing sports, or thinking about sports, it wasn't going to be my shtick. So I worked the old Rolodex, and that's what we called it back then for all the young listeners, for my contacts and stuff, and found a good friend of mine who was designing shoes for Adi in Germany. And he put me in touch with some guys that had just left Nike by the name of Peter Moore and Rob Strasser. And if you're familiar with Shoe Dog, those names are very prevalent. Peter was the guy who first designed the first Jordan shoe. Rob Strasser was the guy who signed Jordan to the deal, and really just we're kind of the top 10 hires, or first 10 hires for Phil when he founded Nike. So those guys had a disagreement for whatever reason, separated, and ended up taking over the Adidas business in America. And I fell in love with these two, and worked for a year to get in there. And finally, I got in, and I was happier than a pig in shit. I was doing sports and talking about sports and thinking about sports every day and calling it a job. So that was my way in. I wasn't an apparel guy. I wasn't a fashion guy. I was a sports guy that found my way into a sports company called Adidas, or Adidas.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know you spent a lot of time in there, and you definitely got to see behind the curtain, which is an experience that most people are not going to have. We're going to talk about and around and definitely through the documentary that you were a part of By Now, that just kind of talks about the industry in general, and probably, I mean, God, everything is wrapped into that, as it is with capitalism, from greed to making money to waste to advertise, all of those things. So you worked your way into that position. I mean, you're damn near at the top at Audi. How did you know when it was time to leave? How long did you sit with that? How long did it wear on you before? And I'm curious, was it dramatic? Like, did you go in and like slap a resignation down on the table? Like, please tell me it was something spectacular.
Oh, that's unfortunately, these kind of decisions are not, because I spent half my life at this place, right? When I left again in 2019, I was 54 and I had finished a 26-year career. I was even 53. So it was really almost literally half my life was at this place. So it was in my blood, right? It was like, just to answer your question, it was a gradual thing. When I became the brand president, again, American shorthand for the German, title, it was fantastic, right? And I was able to, help the turnaround of Audi at the time. And, I think we put $8 billion on the top line over 6 years, and just had unbelievable success, and introduced all sorts of things like, Boost to the industry, which was the first real midsole innovation since Air. We introduced Kanye West and unleashed his potential on really doing things differently. But the thing that was most meaningful to me was we figured out how to collect ocean plastic and turn it into a reusable material that we could make new product out of literally garbage we collected from the ocean. And that came through a partnership with Parley for the Oceans. And with that kind of initiative, we started to see our consumer resonate with that, because it was like, you're not just making shoes that help them jump higher or run faster. You're not just making shoes that understand the culture of sport bleeds off the court and the pitch into the hallways and the streets and the music venues, but it also we could actually make a difference in people's lives in participating in being more sustainable and cleaning up the world and putting your conscious consumerism, if you will, at the forefront. So really addressing what we used to call the game, life, and world aspects of our multifaceted consumer. And I think when we did that, it resonated like crazy. So we launched the first ocean plastic shoe in 2014. And it went, like I said, it went viral as much as anything we ever did with Lionel Messi or Kanye West. And that led me on a personal journey of discovery of like what was really meaningful to me and what was going to be meaningful to my legacy and my children and my children's children, and thinking 7 generations down. So once you start to understand the impact your industry and your job has on the greater world, you start to try to find ways to help. And we did things like Pick a Fight with Plastic, where we eliminated plastic bags from our retail outlets. We eliminated plastic from our plastic beads from our beauty care. We did a lot of things, very positive, limited plastic bottles from all of our campuses, and we made a commitment to get off of virgin polyester in all of our product by 2024, which they honored after I left, and I think they've achieved that. So everything that they make with poly now is recycled polyester, which is a step better, not perfect. But as you go down that hole and you do these things, you quickly discover about yourself you can't unhear, unsee what you've seen and heard about the impact you have. You can only I always like to say whisper yourself to sleep so often, as a human. Yeah. And so I wanted to spend more and more of my time trying to solve for this. So it wasn't as dramatic as you'd like, but it was, it was a resignation that was like, hey, I don't believe in running away from things. I believe in running towards things, and I like to build and create and do things. And so I definitely ran towards an opportunity that I would have more permission to be more playful in the startup world. And that's when I founded Unless with some fellow cohorts of like-minded individuals to really try to prove this point that you can make beautiful, desirable, Yeezy level, Supreme level, Palace level product out of cellulose, plant-based materials, and not out of petrochemicals. And that's what we've proven with Unless. And so we're excited to have that opportunity. But yeah, it wasn't as dramatic, but it was a journey of self-discovery, I would say.
I have to ask, because you're one of the few people that has probably worked with Kanye West directly. What was that experience like?
It was exactly what you think it would be. It was,
that's wild.
It was exciting. It was dramatic. It was maddening. It was frustrating. But it was never boring. And I think, Kanye's a lot of things, but he is a creative genius when it comes to things he puts into the world, whether it be product or whether it be services or whether it be music. Unfortunately, I've found in my experience that creativity comes with a curse, and you have to be careful that you want to be that kind of genius in that regard, because it does come with as he admits a lot of mental health issues, and those have been plaguing him and tormenting him his entire life. And so I have a lot of sympathy for him as well, but my sympathy runs out when it comes to tolerance of some of the behaviors. So again, I don't regret any of it. I learned a ton from him as an individual. And I'm a better person for having, been close and seen how brilliant he can be. I'm also a better person for understanding the pain and the impact mental health issues can have on an individual.
How much, Audi isn't the only brand. Well, in talking about, and again, my limited understanding, I mean, we're talking of billions of dollars generated with somebody like Kanye. So I'm going to have to put him aside to a little bit into like a niche category of that level of influence and impact. How much do brands like Audi, and I saw this Reebok, they sign CrossFit athletes, and it comes into the world of the ambassadors and the endorsers. How much do these brands globally What portion of their business model would you say, from a maybe a numerical perspective or a percentage base, relies upon those relationships, those external people that I hope most people realize, if not everybody realizes, they're paid ambassadors. They might have an immense level of buy-in and creativity, but I'm just curious, in your experience, how much do those, I'm going to call them ambassadors, really move the needle for the brand?
It's a great question. I mean, because you have to look across all different aspects of the brand, right? So at Adi or some of the big brands, you have sports athletes that you sponsor. Now you could call them ambassadors, you could call them just sports marketing athletes or whatever you want to call them. But I think they all play a role, and I think the originator of this was actually Adidas's son at the Mexico City Olympic Games, where they started just paying athletes to wear certain products, and basically it was like suitcases of money. You can read about this. It's all out there. Like would show up and just be like, okay, and just try to own the Olympic Games, because that was the penultimate place to showcase running product, basketball product, what have you. So swimming, what you name it. So there was a free for all, and then it got organized, right? It got more and more companies came on, and then the national governing committees would you sponsor an entire team versus athletes, but it really started from the most purest sense of like literally, whether it be Bill Bowerman working with athletes, in Eugene with University of Oregon, or whether it be Adidas are working with Jesse Owens and Dick Fosbury and some of the different Olympic Games and showing and just making better product for them. So it came from there. It's like really creating the ultimate product to help you perform better. And then it became a sponsor. Then once you got to a level playing field where you can wear multiple brands, then it's like, okay, who's going to show me the most love? So that entered into a multi-billion-dollar industry called sports marketing, where you sponsor teams, you sponsor athletes, you sponsor conferences, you name it. That's a significant role. I mean, to put a number to it, it's if you have a working budget of, let's say, 10% of your net revenue as a company, and that's a general term of somewhere in that neighborhood. Every company would probably allocate probably half of that, 50%, is going towards sports marketing assets, whether that be teams, conferences, or athletes. And so, the bigger the name athlete, the Lionel Messi's, the David Beckham's, the Michael Jordans, the LeBron James, the bigger money goes there. The musician introduction, started really with fits and starts. That kind of started with Run DMC, who they actually adapted or adopted the superstar from Adidas in their own way, in their own shape, and they weren't paid for it. They just loved the shoe so much it became a symbol of their iconic music and everything they did around it. So that then broadened into, these musicians can sell product now too, and people played around with it, and it really accelerated, I'd say, with Kanye. Kanye was kind of like the first one to build up a multi-billion-dollar or billion-dollar business, for a brand. And then you have Travis Scott, you have Virgil, you have all these different influencers that are kind of coming from the music or artistic space, really coming into a point where you can make a very clear argument that they're as important, if not more important, than your current sports marketing athlete. So if you had asked somebody back in the day, would you rather have a Travis Scott Cactus Jack shoe, a LeBron James shoe, or a Virgil Abloh or Kanye West? I think LeBron is going to be fourth or fifth on that depth chart, based upon the heat and the style and how you want to represent yourself. So yeah, the brands have to recognize that, lifestyle is as an important purchasing decision as athletic performance. So I think there's an equation there. Even like On Running, who's a very specialist brand, they still have Roger Federer that's branching them into a lifestyle situation because tennis silhouettes are very wearable, right? So it's an interesting discussion. I can't put a number on it, but it's significant.
It's wild that it's that structured, and it began with guerrilla marketing with an all cash budget, which I feel like harder to control, but way more fun on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, you look at these deals. I mean, I think, but you see that happening now, even with today's sports. It's like the professionalization of our amateur athletes is unreal. Like the NIL, the portal system, high school kids are signing contracts. Harper's son playing at Rutgers, he refused to wear Adi on the court. It's an Adi sponsored school. And he said, no, I'm wearing Nike. I have an NIL deal. And Rutgers backed him. So what happened was Adidas left Rutgers, and now Nike's coming and taking it because of one player's influence as a 5-star athlete on basketball. So it's again, we're going back to that kind of Wild West time, because you've just unleashed through NIL an era where the athletes are back in control versus the teams and conferences that may have controlled them before. So it's a watch this space type of moment. It's going to be interesting.
Good morning, everybody. As you know, Change Agents is an Ironclad original, but what you may not know is that for over a decade, Ironclad has worked with brands and individuals to create world-class films, series, podcasts, and ad campaigns. In fact, I've been working with Ironclad for the past few years. I was introduced to them on a project through the Navy SEAL Foundation. I've worked with them on a variety of projects, even up here in Montana, long before they proposed the idea of Change Agents to me. They're the best in their field. And I say that because there are plenty of people out there looking for the best, looking for the cream of the crop, looking for the top of the triangle. And if you're looking for that, you need to look no further than Ironclad. If you ever need media by way of film, a series, podcasts, or ad campaigns, they have you covered. I want to ask you about something that they talked about in the Buy Now documentary that will lead us in a semi-circular fashion towards Unless, but it's this concept of planned obsolescence. And I think most people palpably feel this if they play in the telephone space. It's really weird. Your device starts to degrade over time, especially as a new drop is getting ready to come out. And I'm curious, I think it's very clear at this point that the electronic industry is not the only one that does that. I'm curious what the fashion industry version of planned obsolescence is, and if you encountered that working with any of the brands that you did.
I would say that we never really talked about planned obsolescence. We talked about building heat and selling. I mean, some of these brands are coming out with 25, 35, 50,000 SKUs, stock keeping units a year. So I always kind of chuckle when people say, I'm from the FMCG, the fast moving consumer goods industry. I was like, you make Pepsi and you have like 3 flavors. So, I mean, literally the relentless pace of fashion and the newness that's required from sports companies or fashion companies, like especially fast fashion companies, and Shein's taking it to a whole nother level, is crazy, right? So that requires you to make things quicker, more efficiently, if you will, optimizing for price, which leads you down a material source space that does then deteriorate quicker over time from a quality standpoint. And that's where you introduce petrochemicals and polyesters and nylons and spandexes and all those things. And so if you've ever had well, we all 70% of what we wear is made from polyester or that type of petrochemical feedstock. That product just gets worn out really fast. It gets really thin. It loses stretch. It starts to sheen. It starts to have a sheen to it. It can start to pill very quickly. So they're not made with the highest quality because you're turning inventory so fast. So it's not like we had sat out there and said, okay, these products can only last for 60 days after purchase. It's more like you just want to optimize for margins, for efficiency production, for price point. So you've got to keep lowering prices to get more consumers and more turns, and therefore you're just making shittier and shittier product that wears out faster and faster to just make it very clear.
At the C-suite level, I mean, talk about this as broadly as you need to, but I'm just curious, when is it discussed at that C-suite level, the negative impacts of creating these accelerated consumption cycle? When, like you said, that like cost is coming down. We're trying to get people to buy more. Obviously, it doesn't last forever. Perhaps we're even designing it to not last forever. I know that there's a profitability portion of that conversation, like you said, the margins and all those things. How much time was spent talking about the potential negative consequences of just creating this much, and I'll put in air quotes, stuff?
It was, first of all, to answer your first question, it is known. It is absolutely known about the impact of the footprint. And if it's not, people are, they're lying, especially in the last 5 years. Since I've left the brand position. It's been almost 5 years to the day since I left Adi. It's like the acceleration of information and news that all these companies know. There's no question about that. They're going to do enough. So no one's going to disarm unilaterally unless they see it as a consumer opportunity. So what we were able to build into when I was at Adidas was we were able to build into an ocean plastic positioning that really resonated with consumers, and it built desire like crazy. So I didn't go into the boardroom saying, this is the thing we need to do because it's philanthropic. I went in the boardroom saying, this is what we need to do because it's good for business. And it drives this story of, consumers' ability to signal or virtue signal that they care about the environment by buying this product made from ocean plastic that we did with Parley for the Oceans. And that became a very compelling reason to buy, which was a storytelling device that would help me sell more product through this material. So with that, the board's like high-fiving, go, fast, because you're killing two birds with one stone. You're doing something good for the world, which everyone cares about, and there's no one that doesn't care about that. But you're also driving business, which is probably more of a reward system because everyone's compensated based upon their financial performance because that's capitalism, right? So, so I think the magic for us to change the industry is to combine those two things. You always have to say you can't force the consumer to compromise their taste for their values or their performance for their values. You have to give them both. Otherwise, we're just going to be, throwing rocks at the system. But my goal is to disrupt the $3 trillion industry and understand how to make the change from within the boardroom by doing better. So that's, leaning into some conscious consumer, but also understanding that they're aware of it, but until you show them consumer advocacy can be built through their initiatives, it's still going to be pushing water uphill. So we need to show that the consumers care enough to buy the product that they're offering. And that's always the magic. So you need to find the right balance of influencers, of people that can help carry this flag and help carry this. Things like Buy Now will help carry the message to make people more aware because there is an awareness issue. And so slowly but surely, those things will wear down and make themselves to the boardroom and show that we have to do this, not because it's governance, not because it's policy, but because it drives brand desire.
One of the things you talked about specifically in that film was the concept of greenwashing. And I was wondering if you could unpack that because it's not really something that I had thought about. And then upon further reflection, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So I'm very reluctant to use the term greenwashing because when you're greenwashing, you're basically saying you're a liar. You're being duplicitous. You're telling me one thing and doing another, right? And I'm not saying those things don't happen. They do. But I need more evidence than to start to paint with that big brush of your greenwashing, right? So I tend to try to look at people always with, I assume, positive intent. So I like the term greenwishing. And I think what I can say as a board member and a continual executive in the industry, there's a lot of greenwishing where people want to do good and they think they're doing enough by saying, okay, we're going to move from virgin polyester to recycled polyester. That was my playbook and I loved it. But now I know more and I know that, recycled polyester is not really good enough. So now we need to take the next step. But it's really how much are the board members and the executives and the different people making these decisions aware of what they're doing, A, and B, how are they communicating that? Because, greenwashing is assuming you're being very duplicitous. And there is a case to be made for that in certain areas. And I would say Shein is trying to paint themselves as a sustainable brand, and they're not. They're not in the least, but they'll go out there, hire sustainable ambassadors to kind of represent them, and they'll do these different things. But just by the model of what they're building, how they're building it, and the fact that they're creating what I now call single use fashion, because you can buy T-shirts for the cost of a cup of coffee. That's not going to last. That's going to give you one or two uses, done. So they're not producing that at scale, and consumers are voting for them because they can have all these new looks for their holiday parties and then throw them all away. And the problem is there's no way. Those guys are greenwashing. Yeah. The stuff we did at Adidas, the stuff that's going on at Nike or whatever these other places, I'd say I know those people very well. I think there's more greenwishing that they hope they're doing enough. They're just not read into enough of the specific issues that's coming out now. And I think if they were, they would do more.
It is an odd thought experiment to think of sheen and then the term sustainability in the same sentence. My daughter is 16 years old. Let me tell you, that's how I know about sheen.
Yeah.
Hey, Dad, my birthday's coming up. Can I send you a shopping cart? I'm like, do you mean an actual shopping cart? Or are we talking like an
No, she means a haul.
Yeah.
She means a sheen haul.
Yeah, HTTPS or whatever it is. And I mean, their model is fast fashion, just item after item after item. And I've seen the wear and tear on the clothes because she leaves them all over the damn floor in our house when she comes and stays with us.
Yep.
Yeah, you put them through 2 or 3 washes and
done.
They disappear from your life, but they're not disappearing from the world. That's for sure.
The problem is that they're and let's call them it. They're promoting single use fashion. That's where we're at now. We're at this point where, you know, I think the Rent the Runway and some of these other companies came up with a really cool idea where you rent a dress for a single use, which is great. You return it and it can be used again. So your wedding seasons or whatever. I think that was really interesting. I think the operations cost on that made it a little less enticing for scale. I think Shein has modeled something that they're escaping. You know, they're coming in underneath the duty levels from how they ship. I mean, the thing that they're doing, the model, the supply chain, it's unbelievable. And their IPO is going to be through the roof. I guess they're going to go public in London. But the problem is everything they do is a bigger footprint, and it's just more of a cost. And they're not responsible. And that's the thing that kills me is they're not being held responsible for the waste and the poison they're injecting in the world, whether it be through flying in, you know, just individual orders from China to your doorstep for your daughter, or the chemicals they're using, which, you know, nobody understands. Polyester and these nylons, they require tens of thousands of chemicals, many of which leach into our bodies and create endocrine disruptions, early onset cancers, you know, all sorts of dementia. I mean, the studies have come out that these microplastics, nanoplastics, they don't go away. They actually go inside of us. Yeah, and they're entering us. Yeah, they're entering us through the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. They're silently, quietly killing us. Our life expectancy is being shortened because of it. You know, there's not a place in our body that haven't been located. I mean, it's like they're in our testicles, they're in our brains, they're in our blood. It's like it is a real, you know, no smoking gun, but it's a silent killer. So what my biggest issue is, if you can do that and you create a model, great, but why are you not being held responsible for your end of life policy? Why are you not being responsible for taking these things back and having to deal with it? Instead, we have to deal with it in our landfills, in our different areas, in our bodies, and no one really quite understands that, but it's becoming more and more readily apparent.
That's a perfect segue to Unless. I mean, talk to me about how long did it take you to crystallize on that idea and then unpack it however you would like to. You know, what is it? What do you guys stand for? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, so Unless Collective is the first 100% plant and mineral-based fashion brand. We set out with the objective to eliminate harmful waste at end of life. I mean, we you know, I think designers or engineers are brilliant, right? But if you give them the right brief, they can solve anything. So we said, let's create a fashion brand that solves for end of life and, you know, the harmful effect of end of life. So that means if you start with the end in mind first, you have to create something, you know, that's going to harmlessly go away, which means we're going to create stuff out of only natural things. So we only use plants and minerals to create all of our product, whether it be the hoodie I'm wearing today or the pants I've on or the sock or whatever it may be. Everything we do is made with that mantra in mind. So the journey to get there was one, as I kind of already spoke to. It's like I first woke up to the issue of what the impact of fashion has on the ocean. And, you know, and partly for the oceans, the founder, Cyril Gooch, walked in my office and said, would you like to help save the oceans? I was like, sure, but I'm kind of busy building a brand here. And he's like, well, you're part of the problem. And then that started my evolution of understanding the impact of the $3 trillion a year fashion industry has on the environment. So it started with that. And then we started to work on some of the solutions when I was at Adi with the innovation labs. And you basically find out very quickly that everyone knows the holy grail is to go from petrochemicals to plants, but no one has the fortitude to do that because A, the consumer demand may not be there. B, it's expensive. It's much more expensive to make something out of plants than it is to make something out of petroleum. C, you know, you have other, you know, mouths to feed from an innovation standpoint. So you've got to always be looking at how you're creating demand, and going back to our earlier discussion about these 50,000 SKUs a year, you've got to make sure you're creating, you know, stories and innovations against those that might be hazardous for the earth, but you still need them to grow your business. So with that kind of evolution, as I said, kind of talking to some partners of mine, decided to take the bold step away from, the only job I had known for half my life with Adidas, and raise some money and start to build a pioneering brand around plants and minerals called Unless. And the Unless name comes from the Lorax. If you're familiar with Dr. Seuss, unless someone like you comes along, nothing will get better. It simply will not. So that's one of the end lines of the book, and was something that really stuck out to me. And so during the pandemic, I was reading that book to my now 10-year-old daughter, and said, like, that'd be a great name. And so I did some trademark search, and there we are.
Is there a product, when you make that switch from petrochemicals over to, I'll just call it natural, is there any particular product line or SKU that is the most difficult to make? Like, which one do you bang your head up against the wall with the most?
Footwear.
Yeah, that checks out, actually. It seems
Footwear's the hardest.
I mean, I went to the footwear factory actually with Reebok in Fuzhou and made a set of the CrossFit shoes. So I have seen what goes in. Yeah. Well, what was crazy and not awesome, and that I don't have the vocabulary to describe, is the hotel that we were staying at. It's funny you mentioned Murph before we started.
Yeah.
We were there on the 4th of July, and a buddy of mine that I was with, we did Murph in a hotel gym overlooking a river that was so incredibly polluted, and there were people bathing and swimming in it. And it's the area, there's a reason why there's pollution in that water. These factories were dumping into the river.
Yep.
And it was crazy. Yep. It doesn't surprise me that the footwear is the most complex, because even as a rank amateur in that world, I was shocked by the number of steps that it takes to terminate in a fully functional pair of footwear.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I'm glad you experienced that firsthand. It's a great story to plug into. I mean, you've seen that, right? And I've seen that, and people in the industry have seen that. So everyone knows the impact we're having on the environment. But as long as it's over there, it's okay. But it's not just over there. People don't understand the environment we live in, the winds and the ocean tides and everything else. The currents, they bring everything is shared on this planet. So we have to understand that there's no away, there's no over there, there's only here. And take that kind of long approach to it. And I think what I would say is there's about 5 core things that we can't solve for right now without robust research and development. And a lot of them are around how to make better shoes. So glues is a big issue, right? We don't have glues that are non-petrochemical. Most of the glues are highly toxic, with highly toxic chemicals, and a lot of the stuff in these factories, if you walk by the gluing section, you quickly move on, and you think like those now ubiquitous masks we wear for COVID are not quite cutting it when you get into the high toxins of glues. And even going back to, I remember kids when I was growing up used to sniff glue to get a little stoned. It's like there's a reason. It's a poison. Yep. So then there's foams. Foams are critical to every shoe. And almost all the foams on the market today, or any of them, are made out of something called polyurethane, which is a petrochemical. But that's something that keeps you soft and cushioned, and helps to drive you forward in sport and stuff. So that's a big one to solve for. Then you have stretch, which is really whenever you stretch something, whether it be a activewear product from Lululemon or Aloe or you name them. It's basically a melted plastic. There's no natural material that stretches naturally. Maybe wool gives you a little bit of stretch, but for the most part, it's a melted plastic filled with all sorts of nasty chemicals that leak in your body when you sweat, by the way. And then there's printing and dyeing. And that's some of the big pollution that you see in those rivers, is like the dye houses and things like that to get a certain richness. So those 5 things are what I call the 5 horsemen. We don't have a solution for those 5 things right now. So when we set out to do Unless, the holy grail was always going to be make a shoe that's 100% plant and mineral based. And we did that. We made the first ever shoe that's 100% natural. It means there are no petrochemicals. Everything down to, we solved for the leather replacement. It's vegan, but it's also non-plastic. So it's a natural, rubber. That's a natural rubber based leather. The canvas, the shoelaces. The outsole is a natural rubber latex that comes from, equatorial rubber trees. Even the foam we used, which is just a really compressed cork material. Just every little thing, even the aglets on the tip of your shoelaces are made with a cross stitch versus a plastic or metal thing. So it took a lot of work. It took us probably 2.5 years to get there, but super proud of what we did as a team, because we set out to build a lighthouse for others to follow. And now that we've done that, there's a lot of inbound traffic saying, okay, how can we do this? How can we help scale this? How do we do that? And that's where the real legacy pays off, because we're setting out to systemically change the way fashion's made and ultimately goes away. And I'm not going to rest until I've made that my life's work.
Well, I'm sure this is public and open source. You guys were recently acquired by Under Armour, which I think is going to help you have the ability to do that, increase your probably bandwidth and scope and scale and size, and you'll probably have a very large checking account associated with the greater brand that you can leverage.
Yep.
How do you live as an entity under that umbrella and maintain the core of what it is that you're trying to do? And do you think that you'll be able to influence Under Armour and take some of the unless values into that brand and maybe change how they're thinking about production and end of life?
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. So Kevin Plank and I, the visionary founder of Under Armour and CEO, have known each other for a number of years. I had many opportunities to partner with other brands, because once we had pioneered this collection and we started to build consumer demand and interest, there was a lot of brands that wanted to partner with us. And what was always built into our model was we were going to build this brand on a better, zero waste stack, if you will. And then we're going to look to partner and collaborate with bigger brands to scale our audience and distribution. Of course, Kevin, being an entrepreneur himself, said, no, we're not going to partner. We're going to buy you. I was like, well, if you're going to buy us, then we need to have an agreement that we're going to scale what we're calling regenerative fashion, and you're going to help us do that with a bigger platform and a global reach and from audience distribution, et cetera. And he's like, Eric, listen, who better to do that with than with a brand that was founded on a material revolution? So while we founded, Under Armour on a revolution of, basically compression wear that is better than cotton, we're now going to disrupt and reinvigorate the industry on a regenerative fashion material with your help. But we need you to come in and take an active role in helping Under Armour be a better Under Armour, and as we scale and less. So yeah, we're very clear in the partnership that we've gotten ourselves into. I'm an active role of the executive leadership team. I'm an active member of executive leadership team at Under Armour. And so this is this regenerative approach is built into our DNA. Let's put it that way. And so I would say watch this space, because we're not slowing down. In fact, we're accelerating this. And that, to me, as an entrepreneur startup person, is really rich and rewarding, because now you can really get some, as you said, so you can capitalize your idea and really scale it quicker.
When did that acquisition go down?
In August.
Oh, okay. So this is relatively recently then, just a few months ago.
Very much. I'm like 120 days in. So it's early days, but again, we're already talking about what we can do. And the Buy Now documentary came out at exactly the right time, because it actually, the inbound traffic is just accelerated, and people that may have been kind of like questioning what we're doing together are like, no, we need to do this now. So it's actually helped the employee community understand what Unless is about and what we're doing and how it may work together with Under Armour.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get into elite shape, or perhaps just make improvements to your current level of fitness, check out the MTNTOUGH digital training program. You can try it for free for 14 days, and you can see the results for yourself. The app allows users to train wherever they are with minimal equipment requirements, whether you're in the gym or you're outdoors or you're at home. Users can access top-tier programming that fits into their lifestyle. The MTNTOUGH app offers expertly designed progressive training plans that guide users from start to finish. These plans are tailored to build resilience, strength, and endurance over time, preventing burnout and injury. The app features self-guided and follow-along coaching videos, allowing users to be coached through every workout step by step. This helps to ensure proper form, motivation, and intensity, regardless of the user's fitness level. The MTNTOUGH app delivers training programs built for the unique physical demands of mountain athletes, including hunters, tactical professionals, and outdoor adventurers. The programs themselves are designed by seasoned strength and conditioning experts, elite athletes, and military veterans. Start your 14-day free trial today and check out the results for yourself. And be sure to use the offer code CHANGEAGENTS, and I'm looking at it as one word, at sign-up, and you can get 40% off your annual subscription. Remember, use the offer code CHANGEAGENTS at checkout. pie in the sky, let's say there was no friction for your ideas. How long do you think it would take to grow to a point where Unless could be a market leader in this category?
Yeah, I kind of look at it like a little differently. I'm looking at the holistic world of changing to regenerative, from petrochemical make, take, and throw away to a regenerative thing where you keep materials in play much longer in the big, regenerative nature cycle. I've got robust goals to say, 15% is the inflection point, right? If you can get to 15% of an industry making things in a better way, then you can flip the industry. And I've looked at that with plant-based proteins. I've looked at that with electric vehicles, looked at that with solar panels. But once you get to a 15% penetration, that's kind of like the inflection point where it goes quicker. So I've kind of modeled that out in my head, but I think in the next, I would say 5 to 10 years, we should be there as an industry, but we have to do our job first. So I have to with Under Armour and Unless create the killer consumer proposition that drives this so fast and so big that every other company wants to move towards this direction as well, because it's a competitive disadvantage. And I can only say that we did that with Ocean Plastic. When we started Ocean Plastic, no one was talking about Ocean Plastic. We made the first ever shoe. I presented at the United Nations General Assembly at Adidas, held up a shoe that was prototype 1 of 1. And fast forward, that was 2014. And fast forward 10 years later to this year, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is, you have feedstock. So if I want to start a brand and start it with Ocean Plastic, there's supply chains that are set up just to fulfill me with reclaimed and captured ocean plastic from the seas or beaches of the world.
Wow. That's awesome.
It's like, I think at Adidas alone, they're doing a couple billion in this product. And I think if you add up there's a bag company called GOTS, which is just about ocean plastic as well, GOTS, and there's all sorts of things. So it's almost normalized. It's a floor item for everybody to use when and if they want. So that's the idea I'm trying to bring into the world of regenerative. So yes, Unless and Under Armour will lead this charge, but we're building an infrastructure behind it for everybody to participate, because cleaning the world should not be an exclusive territory.
For sure. 2 more questions for you to be respectful of your time. First and foremost, for people who are hearing this and they want to get behind the Unless train and they want to source some of this, where can they buy?
Okay, so yeah, thanks. It's unlesscollective.com. We are approaching, our product is born from the Pacific Northwest, so it's got a workwear, craftsmanship, kind of cold water surf, skate kind of vibe to it. So imagine workwear silhouettes that are interpreted for surf, skate, and snow. It's kind of like who I am. It's kind of like who we are as founders, and it's kind of like what we love. So that's kind of like the vibe you'll get from it. We have knits, we have wovens, we have socks, we have hats, we have shoes. We got really cool stuff coming out all the time. We just launched like this really dope workwear collection with like a woven vest with insulation we found from kapok trees, which is an equatorial tree primarily in Africa that has a really silky loft that keeps you really warm. Mechanic jacket, it's just the whole collection there. Again, unlesscollective.com. Let you know about wholesalers as we open up. We're coming to Europe this coming year. So if you've got listeners over across the pond, we are definitely opening up Europe with haste, starting this spring. And then I'd say, that's really the big push right now.
So the final question, I'm curious your thoughts on this. For somebody listening to this, or they have an awakening for whatever reason, and they go and they walk to their closet and they open the door and they think to themselves, holy shit, this is full of petrochemicals. But I want to make a shift. And so they can get behind Unless through the website that you gave. But there's still the issue of how do you make that transition with the things that you have to the things that you want to have? And I'm curious what your thoughts are for people who want to make this shift in their life. What is the best practice for, I don't know the right term, getting rid of, swapping out, removing the things that they have now for what they want to bring in? What is the most environmentally productive way that somebody could switch from a petrochemical based wardrobe to something that is natural based?
So there's 2 things, and I think we have to be careful. It's like the most sustainable thing you can do is continue to wear and use the things you have, like not buying new. That's the most sustainable thing. Then there's the vintage thing. Okay, you can sell your product. just if you have something and it's been in your closet and it's petrochemical, it's polyester, there's no problem with that. I still have some of that product, especially for sports. We have not solved to make sport product. You can buy sport product out of wool, but typically it's going to be a blended wool with polyester. So, there's different things you can look at. I think the awakening is just being aware of it. And when you do go to buy new, you should buy it very considerate. And it doesn't have to be unless if you're buying underwear, there's underwear brands out there that are making them out of natural materials. Now, there is a little stretch in there, but just reducing your footprint of petroleum is going to reduce your footprint of chemicals in your life, because the research coming out and it's all relatively new, and there's very little policy, if any, against this. It's crossing your skin barrier. Especially sweat is triggering the chemical release of some of the stuff that goes into these stretchy things that we all love to wear because they feel good and they're comfy. But be careful. And I think I would be very conscious about how you do that, and just start to look online for things that are made out of natural materials. That's the best thing I can do, is keep using until you're ready to transition. When you are ready to transition and buy new, buy them very consciously and considerately.
Fair enough. Any final words that you would like to leave the viewer with?
Don't lose hope. I've got a lot of inbound, IGs and stuff where people are just really waking up to the Buy Now documentary and being like, so what do I do? And I think it can be overwhelming. Find brands like Unless that have taken the worry out for you. It's like we always put on the back of our product somewhere, we say, don't feel bad. And we mean by that saying, don't hang your head. We took all the thinking for you, and we've made something that's clean that you can feel. You don't have to feel guilty when you wear it. And I think there's enough companies out there that are doing the right thing that you can make a difference, and it does matter what you buy, because there's a lot of startups that don't make the turn. There's a lot of startups that don't get sold. There's a lot of companies that don't get funded because they can't prove their business case. So every single penny counts to these startups to validate their purpose and to validate their proposition for their investment community. So it's a capitalist system, but if we all participate in trying to be cleaner, then I believe that we will make the change, because there's not a shortage of ideas out there. There's just a shortage of financing sometimes.
It's the perfect ending. Eric, thank you so much for your time, man. I hope you have a great holidays.
Thank you, man. You too. Appreciate you being on.
Have a great day. Bye, man. See you. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hope it got you thinking a little bit about what's in your closet. If you want to hear more from people like Eric and other industry whistleblowers, I highly recommend that you check out the new documentary, Buy Now, streaming on Netflix. Thank you again for listening to Change Agents, an Ironclad original, presented by Firecracker Farm. We're going to be back next week with an all-new episode, all-new guest. See you all then.